Once upon a time, in a peaceful village nestled deep within the lush forests of Igbo land, there lived a young boy named Obi. Obi was known throughout the village for his bright smile and gentle heart. He lived with his father, Okeke, who was a respected farmer and loved his son dearly. Life was simple but filled with joy for Obi, who spent his days helping his father on the farm and playing with his friends by the river. But this happiness was not to last forever. One day, Okeke decided to remarry, believing that Obi needed a mother figure to care for him. He married a woman named Nneka, who at first seemed kind and caring. She brought gifts for Obi and told him stories that made him laugh. But soon, her true nature began to show. Nneka was not as kind as she appeared. She was jealous of the bond between Obi and his father and began to treat Obi harshly. She gave him the most difficult chores, like fetching water from the farthest stream and cleaning the house from top to bottom every day. When Obi was tired and hungry, Nneka would give him only a small portion of food, keeping the best for herself. Obi tried his best to make Nneka happy. He did all the chores without complaining and always greeted her with a smile, hoping that she would be kind to him again. But nothing seemed to please Nneka, and her heart grew colder with each passing day. One evening, after a long day of work, Obi sat alone under the big mango tree in the yard. He was tired and sad, wondering why his stepmother was so cruel to him. As he sat there, he heard a rustling in the bushes. He looked up and saw a small rabbit hopping toward him. The rabbit seemed to sense Obi's sadness and nudged his hand gently. "Why are you so sad, little one?" the rabbit seemed to ask with its big brown eyes. Obi smiled a little and patted the rabbit's soft fur. "I'm just lonely," he whispered. "I miss my mother, and my stepmother is so unkind to me." The rabbit stared with Obi until the stars began to twinkle in the sky, and for the first time in a long while, Obi felt a little better. As the days passed, Nneka's cruelty grew worse. She found more ways to make Obi's life miserable. She would send him into the forest to collect firewood, knowing that the forest was full of wild animals that frightened him. But Obi, though afraid, always did as he was told. He knew that if he didn't, Nneka would find a way to punish him even more. One day, as Obi ventured deeper into the forest than he ever had before, he heard the distant sound of drums. It was the kind of drumming that was only heard during special village ceremonies. But Obi knew that there were no ceremonies planned, and the sound seemed to be coming from a part of the forest where no one ever went. Curious and a little scared, Obi followed the sound. It led him to a clearing surrounded by tall trees, their leaves so thick that barely any sunlight could reach the ground. In the middle of the clearing stood a large, ancient tree, its bark covered in strange markings that Obi had never seen before. As Obi approached the tree, the drumming stopped, and a soft voice called out to him, "Obi, do not be afraid." Obi froze, looking around to see who had spoken, but he saw no one. Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "We are the spirits of this forest," the voice replied, gentle yet powerful. "We have watched over you, Obi, and we know of the hardships you face. Your stepmother's heart is filled with envy, and she wishes to harm you. But fear not, for we will protect you." Obi's heart filled with a strange warmth. "Why are you helping me?" he asked, still unsure if he could trust what he was hearing. "Because you have a pure heart, Obi," the voice answered. "You have shown kindness to all creatures, even when you yourself were in need. It is time for that kindness to be repaid." From the ancient tree, a branch slowly bent down, revealing a small, intricately carved charm hanging from it. The charm was shaped like a tiny turtle, with symbols etched into its shell. "Take this charm," the voice instructed. "It will protect you from any harm your stepmother tries to bring upon you. But remember, Obi, its power comes from your own courage and goodness. As long as you stay true to who you are, nothing can hurt you." Obi carefully took the charm and hung it around his neck. Immediately, he felt a surge of strength and confidence that he had never known before. "Thank you," Obi said, bowing his head in gratitude. "I will never forget this." As he made his way back home, Obi felt a new sense of hope. No matter what Nneka tried, he knew he would be safe. When Obi returned home, he found Nneka waiting for him, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "You were supposed to return long ago." "I was gathering firewood, as you asked," Obi replied calmly, clutching the charm beneath his shirt. Nneka's eyes darted to the bundle of wood in his arms, but she said nothing more. She had a feeling that something had changed in Obi, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Deciding to test him, she said, "Tomorrow, you will fetch water from the river, but not from the usual place. You will go to the farthest bend where the waters are deepest." Obi knew the spot she was talking about. The villagers avoided it because it was said to be home to dangerous spirits. But Obi simply nodded and went about his evening chores without complaint. The next day, as the sun began to rise, Obi set out for the river. He held the charm tightly, feeling its warmth against his skin. When he reached the deep bend in the river, he saw that the water was dark and still, almost as if it were waiting for something. Taking a deep breath, Obi stepped into the water, filling his clear pot. As he did, the water began to ripple, and from its depths emerged a massive, shadowy figure. It was the spirit of the river, its eyes glowing like embers in the dim light. "Why have you come to my domain, child?" the river spirit asked, its voice echoing through the trees. "I am Obi," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was sent here by my stepmother, but I mean no harm." The spirit looked at him closely, then noticed the charm around Obi's neck. "Ah, you carry the protection of the forest spirits," it said, nodding slowly. "You are under their care, and so you have nothing to fear from me. Take your water, and return home safely, young one." Obi bowed respectfully and quickly finished filling his pot. As he turned to leave, the river spirit called after him, "Remember, Obi, your stepmother's wickedness will only grow stronger. You must be brave and trust in the protection you have been given." Obi thanked the spirit and hurried back to the village, his heart pounding with both fear and determination. He knew now that Nneka's plans were more dangerous than he had imagined, but he also knew that he was not alone. When he returned home, Nneka was waiting for him again, her eyes narrowing as she saw him return unscathed. "Did you bring the water?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yes, stepmother," Obi replied, setting the pot down carefully. Nneka's lips thinned into a cruel smile. "Very well," she said, though inside she seethed with anger. How had the boy survived the spirits of the deep river? She would have to come up with something even more dangerous. That night, as Obi lay in bed, he thought about what the river spirit had told him. He knew that Nneka was planning something even worse, but he also knew that the forest spirits were watching over him. He touched the charm around his neck and whispered a prayer of thanks before drifting off to sleep. Days passed and Nneka's frustration grew. Every time she set a task for Obi, hoping he would fail, he somehow managed to succeed. He remained unharmed, and each day he returned with a calm confidence that only angered her more. She couldn't understand how the boy was surviving her schemes. Finally, Nneka decided that she had to take matters into her own hands. She could no longer rely on tricks and dangerous tasks. She had to get rid of Obi once and for all. One night, when Okeke was away visiting a neighboring village, Nneka called Obi into the kitchen. Her face was set in a stern expression, but her eyes glinted with malice. "Obi," she said, her voice deceptively sweet, "I need you to fetch something for me. It is a special herb that grows deep in the forest. It is very rare and difficult to find, but it is important for a medicine I must make." Obi looked at her, sensing that this was another one of her traps. But he nodded, knowing that he had no choice but to obey. "The herb grows in the heart of the forest," Nneka continued, "where the trees are tallest and the shadows are darkest. You must go now, while the moon is high, and bring it back before dawn." Obi knew the place she was talking about. It was a part of the forest that even the bravest hunters avoided, said to be home to all manner of spirits and creatures that were best left undisturbed. But Obi didn't hesitate. He knew that whatever dangers lay ahead, the charm around his neck would protect him. As he stepped into the forest, the night was eerily silent. The only sound was the soft crunch of leaves under his feet and the distant hoot of an owl. Obi walked deeper and deeper into the forest, the trees closing in around him until it felt as though the forest itself was alive and watching his every move. Finally, he reached the heart of the forest. The trees here were so tall that they seemed to touch the sky, their branches intertwining to block out the moonlight. The air was thick with the scent of earth and moss, and the shadows seemed to dance around him. Obi searched carefully, his eyes scanning the ground for the herb his stepmother had described. But as he searched, he began to feel a presence behind him, something dark and cold that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Slowly, Obi turned around and found himself face to face with a large, menacing creature. It had the body of a man but the head of a wild beast, with glowing red eyes that bore into him. "You have come too far, child," the creature growled, its voice a low rumble that shook the ground beneath Obi's feet. "This is no place for the living." Obi swallowed his fear and clutched the charm around his neck. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice shaking. "I am only here to find a herb for my stepmother." The creature snarled, its sharp teeth glinting in the darkness. "Your stepmother is a wicked woman," it said. "She has sent you here to die, knowing that you would never return. But you are under the protection of the spirits, and so I cannot harm you." Obi breathed a sigh of relief, but the creature wasn't finished. "However," it continued, "you cannot leave this place empty-handed. The herb you seek grows at the base of the oldest tree in this forest, but it is guarded by a powerful spirit. If you wish to take it, you must pass a test of courage." Obi nodded, knowing that he had no choice but to face the challenge. The creature stepped aside, revealing a massive tree with roots that twisted and curled around the earth like the arms of an ancient giant. The air around the tree was thick and heavy, as if it were charged with some unseen energy. At the base of the tree, nestled among the roots, was a small plant with delicate, glowing leaves. Obi recognized it as the herb his stepmother had described. But as he took a step forward, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, and the ground began to tremble. From the shadows of the tree emerged a figure, tall and ethereal, with eyes that glowed like embers in the night. It was the spirit of the tree, a guardian who had protected the herb for centuries. "Who dares to seek the sacred herb?" The spirit's voice echoed through the forest, filling Obi with a sense of awe and fear. "This herb is not meant for the wicked. Only those with a pure heart may take it." Obi took a deep breath and stepped forward, his hand still gripping the charm around his neck. "I am Obi," he said, his voice steady despite the fear he felt. "I was sent here by my stepmother, but I do not wish to harm anyone. I only want to return home safely." The spirit looked into Obi's eyes, searching for any trace of deceit. After a moment, it spoke again. "Your heart is true, young one," it said. "But the herb is not yours to take freely. If you wish to have it, you must answer a riddle. If you answer correctly, the herb will be yours. If you fail, you will be lost to this forest forever." Obi nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew this was a test he couldn't afford to fail. The spirit began the riddle, its voice like the rustling of leaves in the wind. "I am not alive, but I grow. I have no lungs, but I need air. I have no mouth, but water kills me. What am I?" Obi thought hard, his mind racing to find the answer. He repeated the riddle to himself, trying to piece together the clues. "Not alive, but it grows, needs air, but water kills it." Suddenly, the answer came to him, as clear as the moonlight filtering through the trees. "Fire," he said confidently. "The answer is fire." The spirit smiled, a warm, approving light in its eyes. "You are wise beyond your years, Obi. The herb is yours to take." Obi breathed a sigh of relief as the spirit stepped aside, allowing him to approach the tree. He carefully picked the herb, its leaves glowing softly in his hand. As he turned to leave, the spirit spoke one last time. "Beware, Obi. Your stepmother's intentions are darker than you know. She will not be satisfied until she has taken everything from you. But remember, you are never alone. The spirits of this forest are with you, always." Obi nodded, thanking the spirit for its guidance, and began the long journey back to his village. The forest seemed less menacing now, the trees parting to show him the way home. As he walked, the charm around his neck pulsed with a comforting warmth, reminding him of the protection he carried. When Obi finally reached his home, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. Nneka was waiting for him, her eyes widening in shock as she saw him return unharmed, the glowing herb in his hand. You found it," she stammered, unable to hide her disbelief. "Yes, stepmother," Obi replied, his voice calm. He handed her the herb, watching her closely. He could see the anger simmering behind her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Very good," she said, her voice tight. "Now go and rest. You must be tired from your journey." Obi nodded and headed to his room, but he knew better than to trust her sudden kindness. He could feel the tension in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Nneka was not finished with her schemes, and Obi knew he had to stay vigilant. As the days passed, Nneka became more secretive, often disappearing into the forest alone or locking herself in her room for hours. Obi knew she was planning something, but he couldn't figure out what it was. He decided to keep a close eye on her, waiting for the moment when she would make her next move. One evening, when his father was away again, Obi overheard Nneka speaking in hushed tones with a stranger in the yard. He quietly crept closer, hiding behind the tall grass to listen. "This boy is protected by some powerful magic," Nneka was saying, her voice low and filled with frustration. "But I can't let him stand in the way of my plans. You must help me get rid of him once and for all." The stranger, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, nodded. "There is a way," he said in a gravelly voice. "But it will require a great sacrifice." Nneka's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "I will do whatever it takes," she hissed. "The boy must be gone." Obi's heart raced as he heard this. He knew that whatever Nneka was planning, it was more dangerous than anything she had tried before. He needed to act quickly. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Obi sneaked out of the house and made his way to the ancient tree in the heart of the forest. He knew that he needed the help of the forest spirits if he was to survive Nneka's final, desperate attempt to get rid of him. When he reached the clearing, the spirits were already waiting for him, their forms shimmering in the moonlight. "We know why you have come, Obi," the spirit of the ancient tree said, its voice gentle. "Your stepmother has made a dark pact with a dangerous man. They plan to use powerful magic to destroy you." Obi nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "What can I do to stop them?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You must confront them, Obi," the spirit replied. "But you must not do so alone. Call upon the spirits of the forest, and we will stand by your side. You have the power within you to protect yourself and your father, but you must be brave." Obi nodded again, determination filling his heart. He knew that the time had come to face Nneka and put an end to her wickedness once and for all. The next morning, as the sun rose over the village, Obi prepared himself for the confrontation. He gathered his courage, feeling the strength of the forest spirits flowing through him. He knew that he had to act before Nneka could carry out her plan. He waited until Nneka left the house, following her into the forest. She was heading to a secluded spot where the stranger was waiting, ready to perform the dark ritual that would rid her of Obi forever. When Obi reached the clearing, he saw Nneka and the scarred man standing by a circle of stones, a strange, glowing symbol etched into the ground between them. The air was thick with the smell of burning herbs, and a cold wind whipped through the trees as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "Nneka," Obi called out, stepping into the clearing. His voice was strong, filled with the power of the forest spirits. Nneka whirled around, her eyes widening in shock and fury. "You," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "How dare you follow me?" "I know what you're planning," Obi said, his voice steady. "But it won't work. The spirits of this forest are with me, and they won't let you harm me." The scarred man sneered, stepping forward with a dangerous glint in his eyes. "You think you can stop us, boy? You're just a child." Obi felt a surge of fear, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the warmth of the charm around his neck. "I'm not alone," he said, his voice unwavering. "And neither is my father." At that moment, the wind picked up, swelling around the clearing with a fierce energy. The trees seemed to come alive, their branches swaying and creaking as if in response to some unseen command. The scarred man hesitated, glancing around as the shadows deepened and the temperature dropped. "What is this?" he muttered, his voice trembling slightly. Nneka's eyes darted around, panic rising in her chest. She had underestimated the power of the forest spirits, and now she was beginning to realize the gravity of her mistake. "Leave this place," the voice of the ancient tree spirits boomed, echoing through the forest. "You are not welcome here." Nneka and the scarred man backed away, fear etched on their faces. But Nneka, driven by her hatred, refused to give up. "No," she screamed, raising her hands to cast the dark spell. "I won't be defeated by a mere child." But before she could utter the incantation, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble, and the circle of stones exploded in a burst of light. The spirits of the forest, now fully visible in their shimmering forms, surrounded Obi, shielding him from harm. The scared man turned and fled, his courage shattered in the face of the spirit's wrath. But Nneka, blinded by her rage, tried one last time to strike at Obi, lunging toward him with a twisted snarl. But as she lunged toward Obi, a powerful force stopped her in her tracks. The ground beneath her feet cracked open, and thick roots shot up from the earth, wrapping around her arms and legs, holding her in place. She struggled and screamed, but the roots tightened their grip, pulling her back as if the forest itself had come alive to protect Obi. The spirits of the forest stood tall around Obi, their forms glowing brighter with each passing moment. Nneka's anger turned to fear as she realized she was powerless against the forces she had so foolishly underestimated. Your wickedness ends here, Nneka, the spirit of the ancient tree declared, its voice reverberating through the clearing. You have brought darkness and suffering upon an innocent child, and now you must face the consequences of your actions. No, no, please. Nneka begged, her voice trembling as she was forced to her knees by the unyielding roots. I was wrong. I was only jealous, only trying to protect what I thought was mine. But the spirits were unmoved. You were consumed by your own hatred and envy, the tree spirit continued. And now, that darkness will be taken from you. With those words, the roots began to draw Nneka toward the ancient tree, where the bark seemed to shift and open, revealing a dark hollow. Nneka's screams echoed through the forest as she was pulled inside, the tree closing around her like a prison. Obi watched, his heart heavy with a mix of emotions, relief that he was safe, sadness for his father, and a deep sense of finality. The forest fell silent again, and the wind died down, leaving only the rustle of leaves in the distance. The spirit of the ancient tree turned to Obi, its expression softening. You have shown great courage, Obi, it said gently. Your stepmother's cruelty has been banished, and you are free from her torment. But remember, the forest will always be your protector, and you will never be alone. Obi nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for everything. The spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air until only the ancient tree remained, its bark smooth and whole once more. The forest returned to its usual stillness, and Obi knew that the danger had passed. He made his way back home, the weight of the events heavy on his mind. When he arrived, he found his father, Okeke, sitting on the porch, looking worried. Obi, where have you been? Okeke asked, relief flooding his face as he saw his son safe and sound. Obi hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to explain everything that had happened. But he knew that he couldn't keep the truth from his father. Father, there's something I need to tell you, he began, sitting down beside him. As Obi recounted the events of the past few days, Okeke listened in stunned silence. When Obi finished, his father took a deep breath, struggling to process everything he had just heard. I had no idea that Nneka was capable of such evil, Okeke said finally, his voice filled with regret. I failed to see the harm she was causing you, Obi, and for that, I am truly sorry. Obi shook his head, placing a hand on his father's arm. It wasn't your fault, father. Nneka hid her true nature from everyone. But now, it's over. We can start again, just the two of us. Okeke pulled Obi into a tight embrace, his heart swelling with pride and love for his son. Yes, Obi, we'll start anew, and I promise to be the father you deserve. From that day on, life in the village changed for Obi and his father. Without Nneka's dark presence, their home became a place of warmth and happiness. Okeke devoted himself to caring for Obi, and the bond between father and son grew stronger with each passing day. Obi continued to visit the forest, always remembering the spirits who had protected him. He would sit beneath the ancient tree, feeling the presence of the spirits around him, and offer his thanks for their guidance and protection. As time passed, the story of Obi's bravery spread throughout the village, and he became known as the boy who had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The villagers, who had once pitied Obi for his hardships, now looked up to him with respect and admiration. And though the memory of Nneka's cruelty would always be a part of his past, Obi knew that he had overcome it with the help of the forest spirits and his own inner strength. He had faced his fears, protected his father, and found his place in the world, a place where he was loved and valued for who he truly was. In the years that followed, Obi grew into a wise and kind young man, known throughout the land for his courage and compassion. He never forgot the lessons he had learned in the forest, and he carried the Spirit's teachings with him, always passing them on to others in need. And so, the story of Obi, the boy with the pure heart who triumphed over evil, was told and retold, becoming a cherished legend in the village, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, as long as one has the courage to face the challenges that come their way. The story of Obi and the wicked stepmother carries several important moral lessons. Courage in the face of adversity. Obi shows great bravery by facing the challenges set before him, especially when he has to confront the dangers in the forest and his stepmother's dark intentions. The lesson here is that courage can help us overcome even the most difficult and frightening situations. The power of goodness and purity of heart. Obi's pure heart and good intentions protect him and ultimately lead to his triumph over evil. This teaches that maintaining a kind and pure heart, even when faced with wickedness, can lead to victory and protection. The consequences of envy and hatred. Nneka's downfall is a direct result of her envy and hatred toward Obi. The story shows that harboring negative emotions and acting out of spite can lead to one's own destruction. The importance of family bonds. Despite the challenges he faces, Obi's relationship with his father becomes a source of strength and comfort. The story highlights the importance of strong family bonds and the love between parent and child. Respect for nature and the supernatural. The forest spirits play a crucial role in protecting Obi. This teaches the value of respecting nature and recognizing that there are forces beyond our understanding that should be respected. The triumph of good over evil. Ultimately, the story reinforces the timeless lesson that good will always triumph over evil, and those who do wrong will eventually face the consequences of their actions. Thank you so much for watching, and please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoy this story, give it a thumbs up, comment and share. Thank you and God bless you.